We're also excited to share with you our conversation with Jake Rakov, who's 37 years old, running in California, as we mentioned, against his former boss, Congressman Brad Sherman. He was Congressman Sherman's deputy communications director. While he does not hold any ill will, he does see what many of us do, that it is time for some change. So we hope that you love this chat with Jake Rakov. Jake, I'm really excited to have you here on Pantsuit Politics. I am surprised as a 40-something-year-old Kentucky mom that I am so interested in a California election. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I think it says you're doing a lot of things right. I want to start really local with you because you do live in a really different place than I do. If I came into your district and went to dinner with 5 or 6 folks, what would be the pressing concerns that came out of that dinner about life?
I think this district is really unique because it actually covers a pretty broad section of Los Angeles. And I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with LA geography. I'm in Studio City, which is in the San Fernando Valley, kind of on the eastern edge of the district. But the district actually expands all the way out west to Malibu and the coast and Pacific Palisades, where the fires were. So that is, depending on kind of where you lottery picked those 5 residents from, everyone's going to have a little bit of a different view of how life is going for them in Los Angeles right now. I think a few unifying things that we have are the Palisades fire and the rebuilding, making sure we maintain our community, our small businesses, and the jobs that were lost, and certainly the people who want to get back in their homes. I think another one you're going to see is Ventura Boulevard is one of the main streets of this district. It kind of cuts almost completely across the middle of it from Studio City, where I am, all the way out to Tarzana and Calabasas. A lot of those businesses have closed down. A lot of those businesses were small businesses owned by residents for decades. There's a lot of for lease signs on Ventura Boulevard right now. And every one of those has a different story, obviously, of why they're not there anymore. But I think I've talked to business owners who've said rising rental costs and overhead costs. And most recently, the tariffs are starting to affect some of the import business who sell goods from other countries. So there's a lot of impact there as well. And I think the other part of the district is if you go north that we go into, which is California State University Northridge area, the university. There's Winnetka, Reseda, a lot of that area. That's a lot of area that has been needing economic opportunity. It's a lot of younger families. Like myself, I graduated college in 2011 after the 2008 financial crisis. The idea of home ownership like my parents had in older generations, we don't have that same reality. So I think economic opportunity for a big swath of this district of bringing good jobs back to the district and economic opportunity around where you grew up, where you saw your parents make a good living. And now you're like, how can I not make same good living in the same area?
I mean, some of that doesn't sound unique to our part of the country. I only say that because, those are some big issues people are struggling with everywhere. They're not necessarily extreme or revolutionary problems, but not everybody's out there running against their former boss, Jake. That's a big deal. As a former staffer, that's a big deal. How'd you get there?
Well, I, like many other Democrats around the country, I've worked in Democratic politics since 2012. I started in college really working on local races in Austin. I went to UT Austin. When I came to LA, I came out to be an actor. I was a bartender and a waiter. And through those connections I met of my customers, I got back into LA politics, which I had worked on and studied in college. So I met a mayoral candidate in 2012, jumped on her race, worked in the Valley. She used to live around the corner from where I live now. So I started every day at 6 a.m. in this neighborhood, meeting people and folks like that. So I got to learn LA politics very, very quickly, and I fell in love with the city. I think I've been in this industry for so long, and like so many Democrats, after Trump won again in 2024, we all kind of went off on our own, kind of turned off cable news for a few months. Ratings probably dropped for every network, drank a little too much champagne to forget everything. But looking back on it, how did we get here again? How did we, for the first time, yes, a fluke, everything was kind of crazy. No one knew what was going to happen. And that's when I worked for Congressman Sherman, was in 2017 during his first term. And we saw how crazy it was so quickly, and to think, okay, we've gotten him beat, he's gone, we've got Biden, we're going to pass the torch and all these things, and this new Democrat era can begin again, because we saw just how crazy that got. And then he won. And all of us were kind of shell-shocked. And it's something I've talked a lot about in my career of the Democrats needed to move quicker after Obama to replenish their bench, to allow that new generation to come up, to allow those House members to raise up to senators, to raise up to governors, to raise up to AGs. And if we think that the Clinton and Bidens who have been on the ballot since 1970s, this is the first time we haven't had a Biden or a Clinton like national government since like 1972. That's crazy. If we're not going to wake up and move the party forward ourselves from the party establishment, then it's going to be up to us to actually do it. And so that's really what led me to run.
So you're running this very ambitious generational change campaign against your former boss around 3 good governance pillars. And that's part of what really got my attention in your campaign, because I feel like on the other side of 2024, one of the postmortem takes that is kind of congealing in a way that I think is not exactly right is this idea that voters don't care about democracy. I think voters did not accept the democracy argument that the Biden campaign made and that the Harris campaign inherited and ran with. But I do think the way that you're talking about democracy issues has pretty broad appeal. So will you talk about those 3 pillars and why you decided to go this route in your focus?
Absolutely. So I think, thank you. The 3 points of my pledge that I'm running on that I promised to do is A, no corporate PAC money to my campaigns. I think after Citizens United, the direct donations of corporation PACs to candidates has just gone completely haywire. The other one is term limits. I believe in 5 terms for congressmen or congresspeople. That's 10 years in Congress. That's in D.C. And then I'll hold a town hall in district every month I'm in office. I think these 3 things speak to something that I feel like we have lost in our politics, which is common sense. I feel we have lost so much common sense in our electoral politics, and that Congress was never meant to be a career. I think just by the rules of the game that you have to reapply for the job every 2 years, and every 10 years, your entire district can shift. Those to me do not point to a job that's meant to be a lifelong position, And I think I think that's a good function of democracy to get new people in, to get new members of the community to serve their public. And so I think the 3 things we decided to run on were those 3 things these are 3 things that everyone could do tomorrow. Every single member of Congress could take this pledge tomorrow, start their 5-term, term limits, and we would get more progressive politics the day after. Like it would immediately start people rethinking of how they legislate, how they operate in Congress, and how accessible and accountable they are to their constituents. And I think that's the core thing I'm trying to get to is it is so easy nowadays with technology and where we're getting our media, and also what we as voters, as you were talking about, kind of rejecting that idea of democracy that Biden and Kamala ran on, we are wanting our members and our elected leaders to be accessible, to be accountable. It's too easy to do that now for them to take the pass and go, oh, I'm in DC. I can't deal with my constituents right now. And I think voters have just completely not accepted that anymore. And I think that's where that's coming from.
I love the pledge, and I love the idea that people could take it tomorrow. I'm wondering, have you thought any about more long-term structural changes to get at that? Like, I always use Los Angeles County, I think it's the county commission, as an example of how much we have ballooned in the amount of representation. Like, I mean, the amount of constituents per representative. Yes. Like, I really support uncapping the House. I think that's part of the Democratic issue is that it's not just that they're not responsive, it's that you have so many people to be responsive to. Exactly. That's really, really hard when it's so many people. And people feel like one of a couple 100,000 because they are. Have you thought about any, like, structural reforms, or have you heard of any other, like, progressive ideas around getting at that, the amount of constituents that you're trying to be responsive to?
I think that's a great idea. I hadn't heard of that before, the uncapping the House. I think that's a kind of an ingenious way to think about things because, yes, a member of Congress on average represents about 750,000 constituents right now. That's a lot. That's more than some states. And so it is interesting that, yes, and the LA County Board of Supervisors, as you were talking about, I think there's about 5, and they represent the entire LA County. And that's
it's like the size of a country. That's insane.
Exactly.
It's just a law. It's not in the Constitution, man. Like, it's not hard to change. They just did it because they like the size of the room. It's so stupid.
It's true, though. I mean, we forget a lot of these things are arbitrary, that we have been inventing democracy again and again over the last 200 some odd years. And it was never like started as it was, right? We weren't the 13,
Right.
we aren't the 13 colonies anymore. And so all of these things that we can look at changing, we can, and we've changed them even recently, go back into like the early 1900s,
Right.
democracy looked very different on a functional level than what it does now. So I think any of those ideas are good to bring to the table to say, okay, look, what we have been doing is obviously not working for where we as a country are and where we're going. And if we want to save this democracy and hold on to it, we are seeing it tested right now under this administration like never before. And we have to be able to be creative to go, okay, how do we not let this happen in the future? And how can we actually make democracy work for the people again?
If you just want to kick around structural ideas anytime, we're your girls. We've been thinking about this for a long time. We have many, many ideas. But what I really appreciate about these pillars that you're running on is that you aren't waiting for those things. Like we can sit around and go, oh, money in politics, terrible. How do we deal with it? And you're just saying, well, just don't take it.
Exactly.
Just don't take that PAC money. It brings me to something that we've been discussing for the 10 years we've been doing this, which is kind of the tension of like, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Mm-hmm.
That really appeals to me because anything that is an argument based in grace, I'm going to find appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do understand the pressures that our representatives are under. And it's a very difficult job that I personally don't want because I can see how difficult it is. At the same time, I worry that there is a real lost sense of agency by people in these seats because the game is so complicated and so hard. And it feels like a breath of fresh air for someone like you to come along and say, I see it too, and it will make my campaign more difficult, but I'm going to do it and know that I'm contributing something just by showing that it can be done. If you win an election against an incumbent without taking corporate PAC money, you have made a very big statement.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it is. I am fully aware. I've worked in this industry long enough to know the uphill climb that I have in front of me. That certainly was daunting when I started it, but it was never a deal breaker. I was never going to say, because the whole thesis of my campaign is this incumbency protection that we have just instilled into our party that makes us think primaries are somehow illegal or immoral, that active competition in an active democracy is somehow counterintuitive. I've seen it for so long. And I said, you know what? I'm in a unique position where I have done this as my career. I can bring a new challenge to an incumbent who's been here for 30 years and hasn't had a real challenge in 13 years since 2012. Like, I can actually bring a unique challenge to this and show, you know what? We have to have this conversation. And if we have to start it forcefully just to bring this conversation to the table, then that's the way it has to be done. Because going about as we have for the past few decades of just, people in DC know better, they're telling us what Democrats are supposed to do and how the party's supposed to function, has only gotten us Trump twice and now a Republican trifecta that's letting the government basically burn to the ground. So if this is not the time to have that conversation, I don't know what it would take for the other leadership to go, oh, you know what, let's actually evaluate ourselves.
I've been a Democrat a long time, Jake. And I've been in Democratic politics a long time. And I know enough to know that you are taking heat publicly, but I got a hunch that privately you're probably hearing from people as well. So what are people saying privately about this challenge and what they would like to see where they are or how they're feeling about this sort of movement to primary Democrats?
It's funny. Yeah, we have, I've gotten a lot of radio silence from the party establishment that I kind of expected of not returning phone calls or, people I've worked with before, not, seeing my text message for a few days kind of thing. But I've heard every excuse in the book. But I've also gotten a lot of proactive emails from community activists and leaders around this district and around the country saying, thank you. We need this challenge. We need to have this conversation. Thank you for stepping out. I've had some people reach out and say, thank you. You inspired me to run against my city council member, to run against my local state rep who's been there forever. And I've had some Democratic staffers from the Hill reach out on Signal, the famous app, and go, don't tell anyone I said this, but how can I help behind the scenes? I think there is just a want of change and new energy, and we just need new voices to be able to think creatively, to see we have a lot of problems facing our country and our party and our districts. What we have been doing for so long is clearly not working anymore.
I think you're right that there is a vibe that competition is feared, and that seniority is the most important thing. I mean, just as we're talking today, I was reading this morning about who's going to head a committee after Dick Durbin resigns. And we're just like, well, I tend to favor seniority. Seniority is the way to do this. And that seems like a bananas lesson to take from the past election to me. And I was thinking about this good governance agenda of yours as a model for the party.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that you have these pillars that could translate nationwide as a contrast to Republicans. So the democracy argument not being Voldemort over there is going to take everything down and we've got to sell you on how bad they are.
Yeah.
But the democracy argument being we're going to clean up our own house first. Yeah. And if that's what the national party we're about right now, then I think it would give candidates a lot of room on specific issues to be what their districts need them to be. Is that kind of part of your calculus here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the size of the House and the size of these districts and just how across the country they are, every district's going to have different issues that they're wrestling with, especially given where the government is right now. And so, yeah, the issues I hear in my constituency are not the same as someone in Michigan or someone in Florida, a Democrat even. And I think, us being able to say, yes, this is terrible what is happening over here. Democrats can be the party to intelligently rebuild the government because we're going to have to. We're going to have to restart this government and bring it back. But we can bring it back smarter and better and, yes, more efficient, to use the key word. But Democrats should be the ones that voters can trust to do that with a sane hat on. And we can't do that if we are stuck in this mentality of ignoring the problems that led us to where we are. And so it's not about, I think, rehashing the past or anything like that, or saying, oh, this person did that and that. But it is about, we have to be able to ourselves as Democrats look at our own party and go, where did we drop the ball? Where did we fail? And how can we move forward to be able to get voters to trust us again? Because we've always been the party of progress and for the middle class and working Americans. And that's who's going to get hurt by a lot of these policies. How do we get them to trust us again? And I think showing that we are taking our own mess seriously is a good step to doing that.
Well, and look, where else is that conversation going to happen except in a primary?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I am sympathetic to how we got here. When there are finite resources and, finite support, well, then, of course, you would look at swing districts and you would focus there. And you wouldn't be consumed with safe districts. I get it. I do. Only problem with that argument is that the swing districts shrink in number every year. We don't have that many seats to defend. Nope. So that's why it gets so limited and the conversation gets so stilted and shrunken, because we're operating on what? We're defending 50 seats? No, it's not anywhere close. So if we're not testing our own ideas in primaries, they're not getting tested because we just don't have enough swing districts anymore. Now that's a problem that I actually think Uncapping the House would get at. But until it does, that's the limitation of that idea. Now I get that the swing districts have gotten more expensive. Those races have gotten more expensive. I get that. I can see that. I understand that. But that's also still kind of a limiting vision through which only money is the thing that matters. It's the only resource we have to protect. I just think if we can't allow some freedom of debate and innovation inside primaries, and we're basically saying, 2/3 of these don't even matter.
And agree. And I think we have disenfranchised so many voters because of that exact mentality. And if we cannot look at our safe seats, this is a D plus 20 something seat, right? He's won handedly over Republicans plus 20 points every time he's ran. If we can't have those conversations in our safest seats to go, okay, let's hash out this democratic idea. Let's hash out these policies from a democratic perspective. And in other districts across the country as well, where there are safe democratic seats, granted on different issues, but we should be able to have these conversations here, because then how can we trust ourselves and our party and our brand, which we do have a national brand, to go to those swing districts and go, oh, I know what a Democrat is. I know what Democrats are fighting for. I see the Democrats who are leading their party and leading the voices of other Democrats. And that is what they are going to do here. And instead, you're absolutely right. We focus on the swing districts first and go, oh, we got to buckle down on these frontline Dems. And we do, because they're going to be the most dangerous. But that's not where we as a party are forming our ideology. That's where we're defending it. But we are forming it here. And it's these primaries that I think others are running are really allowing us to go, okay, what is that message we're going to take into those swing districts to go, okay, this is where the Democratic Party is right now.
So you are quite a bit younger than your opponent, and you are getting profiled in connection with other people who are quite a bit younger than their opponents. And this topic of age in politics makes people really nervous. It makes a lot of people in our audience really nervous every time they hear us talk about Joe Biden's decline and our feeling that he should not have run again, because it's easy to get in a very zero-sum place about generational struggle and about age as a factor in who should be leading us. So I wonder how you think about that and how you speak to much, much older people you want to represent. How will you be both a voice of the new generation while also caring for people whose dependence on government grows as they get into later chapters of life?
Yeah. I lost my mom earlier this year. She passed away in March 5th. And I listened to y'all's episode the other week about assisted suicide, dying with dignity, and she was in hospice for the last few weeks of her life. She had dementia and a number of other health issues. And I lost my father a couple of years ago to cancer, who also went through a hospice situation.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
That's a lot to
tearing
go
up
through.
right now.
Sorry, I
I'm
just
so
dumped that
sorry.
on them.
No.
Thank you. And double whammy, my dog has cancer and is getting surgery today.
No.
It's been a roller coaster week.
Why? We should have baked you something. I'm so sorry.
No, thank you. You guys got me on a day, but I'm so excited to be here. But I started that sentence by saying, we do have a generation that is about to come into an age where they are retiring, where they are receiving services that they paid into, and they are due those entitlements of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And to think that the Republicans in Congress are just going to callously cut them without blinking an eye probably here in a few weeks. But the thing about, I think, my pledge that I really appreciate is that it doesn't say anything about age. It doesn't say anything about, oh, once you hit 70, you're really not helping anyone. You need to go and sit down and just kind of set away. If you are 65 and you want to run for office for the first time and you are serve a district with an experience that district appreciates, go all for it. You have experiences and knowledge that I don't at 37, and that 25 or whatever the minimum age is, I think, for Congress, that they don't have, certainly. And that's not to discredit my experience, certainly, or anyone else younger than me who's running. We have experiences and worldviews that a 65-year-old person wouldn't have. Yeah. But I think just this idea that allowing the district to choose new and vibrant people, and at least have that primary system of the conversation of, okay, the district's even shifted the boundaries. Where are we right now? In 10 years, did a factory close? Did a business open? Did a university expand? All these things change the dynamics of the districts. And if you are not actively connected to that district, like I think so many of these long-term incumbents, they just rest on their laurels and stay in DC all the time, like my opponent does. He doesn't even live here anymore. How are you connected to that constituency to know where they're feeling? How are you engaging with them? How are you truly representing what your district is if you weren't here dealing with them and seeing and where they are emotionally, where they are economically? I doubt Congressman Sherman knows the state of Ventura Boulevard right now. I doubt he does. He's never here. And so if you can't take that to DC, to where you legislate, that's the problem. And then you become ineffective. And that's what all this is about. It's about effectiveness. It is about accountability, accessibility, and effectiveness. If with term limits, I think we get to that. We get to that idea of 10 years from now, I'd be done, and whoever else is next can bring up where the community is then. And that's the whole point of it.
I do think there's something to be said, though, for the time in D.C. I do want to put in a plug for, I think all the time about Bill Clinton saying, like, the Contract for America, where everybody started going back to their districts every week, is where a lot of the bipartisanship fell apart. Do you think about how to balance that? Like, I think once a month is reasonable. You got to go pretty far to California, but, like, I think it is hard to balance, like, the relationships you're trying to build on the Hill with the relationships you're trying to maintain with your constituents.
Absolutely. I think they go hand in hand, right? I think there is something to be said. Right now, I don't see a ton of bipartisan work happening across the aisle at the moment, but it happened before, and I believe it can happen again. But I believe it can happen again if everyone comes to that table with that same understanding of, oh, I'm here for 10 years. I got to get shit done. I can't lay around waiting, for my seniority to kick in so I can actually propose a bill that gets anywhere in the committee. If everyone, I know it's going to take, generational change and structural change like you were talking about, but that's the idea of the game of is, we got to work through this quickly because I don't have 5 years to wait for a study to tell me what my tax percentage needs to be. I think so many things we pass now are just for government studies. That doesn't help anyone. That doesn't help a thing. We know what's happening. We see it in our communities. We see in our districts. And I know there are Republican districts who are suffering the same way my districts are. And so I have to be able to know and research that and find out who's on my kind of issue base and go, okay, let's work together. And you can do that a lot faster if you are more clear-sighted about the issues affecting your community.
What is your thought about bipartisanship? Who is in your scope of someone that you could work with across the aisle, or is that just kind of off the table right now because of the Trump administration?
I don't think it's totally off the table. I think there was I think yesterday there was someone posted about a bipartisan bill about lithium-ion battery safety measures, and it passed, I think with maybe 30 people opposed to it for some reason. You'll find, I think, those kind of things that are just yes, we need to update some regulation or some law because technology is not where it was when the law was written. I think there are some Republicans who probably are out there with a little bit of a sane mind. I think Michael McCall, he's on Foreign Affairs and Armed Services. He's done well, I think, for international issues. But, I think right now, the ability of just getting anything through Congress does seem to be pretty stifled in a way that it's going to take some time to get that back. And I think, January 2027, Democrats take back to the House. I do think you're going to see a lot of the legislative calculus shift because of that.
We always end our episode outside of politics.
Yeah.
And I know that you are a theater kid.
Yes.
And I would love to hear what your favorite musical is and why.
Ooh.
That's mean, Beth. That's like asking somebody their favorite child. You can't be a theater kid.
I promise a hard-hitting interview. I'm telling you.
This is what we came for. I've got a couple things. I'll qualify it. So, Cell Block Tango is probably my favorite musical song.
It's Chicago.
So good. It's so
right.
Good.
You could only do that song in a musical. You could only do that song, and that is what musicals are for, right? That is just it wasn't a pop song. It was just a great song that can only be done in a musical. So Chicago's definitely up there. When I was in high school, Guys and Dolls was our big musical that we did. So that always has a soft place in my heart. That was kind of our big singing musical.
Did you ever see the performance of Guys and Dolls in London?
No.
The audience was a part of it, so the stage would rise and fall.
Oh, wow.
And there were people in there, and so little police officers would come and kind of move you around as
awesome.
Some of it came up and became
That's
pieces
great.
of and then they drop it back down, they dance, and it was so cool.
I mean, that's the thing about theater is you can do so many of those innovative, creative ways to perform things. I got to, before my mom passed, take her to New York to see Cabaret with Eddie Redmayne, which was such a unique take on the production. And Cabaret's a great musical as well. But it was so interesting to see. It was in the round, so the audience was a part of it. Like you were saying, we were in the Kit Kat Club. But that's what I love about theater is everything. You can always do something new. You can always reinvent it. And I think in a little bit in politics, I think that's what politics should be. You always can invent. You always can do new ways of thinking. And we have to allow ourselves to do that, but we can't if we're still stuck operating like it's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I love what you said about how Cell Block Tango could only be done in a musical. I think that's what I'm always looking for. I subscribe to our local theaters, season,
Nice.
And I don't like the jukebox musicals. I just don't. I want to keep my mind open. We just saw & Juliet. I had really high hopes. The performances were stellar. The woman who played Juliet, it was worth being there just to hear her sing whatever, because she was incredible. But I just always find myself feeling like, we worked really hard to get these songs in and stretch some kind of story around them. And I like the distinctiveness of songs that can only be in a musical.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a sound to them, obviously, but I think there's just a more acceptance of a storytelling in the music that doesn't exist a lot in a lot of pop musicals. And when we can hear those amazing singers sing those songs, the vocalist who can perform that on Broadway unlike anywhere else. But I think just the drama of how a song can be only really exists in a true musical.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. Keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Again, if you
Absolutely.
want to hear like how we think the Supreme Court could be better, let us know.
Would love to have that. Tons of ideas. Would love to talk to you about them.
Perfect. And good luck with your campaign.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much to Jake for being here and for sharing his vision as part of a new tide of hopeful Democratic leadership. We know there are lots of great candidates gearing up to run in 2026 and beyond, including many of you. We want to hear from you. If you're out there mounting a campaign, it gives us so much hope about what's to come in America. We appreciate you spending time with us all week this week.